Welcome back to ARC Tutorials. This is CSS full tutorial series for absolute beginners. Today we are going to learn and master one of the most important things of CSS, which is CSS combinators. Right? What are combinators? What are the different types of CSS combinators that are available? How do we use them? What are the different syntaxes for each of the way to use them? I'm going to cover everything in this series. Make sure that you pause wherever you want and practice along, because this is what you would be doing at your day in your day-to-day job as a developer, as a designer. All right, so that being said, let's get started. This is part 21 of the series. Today we are learning CSS combinators. If you have missed out on the first 20 episodes, you have missed a lot. Make sure that you go back and revise and check all the episodes in order to have continuity to your learning. CSS combinators are used to select HTML elements based on their relationships with other elements. Very interesting thing, because so far what we have written, the code is all singular classes, something which is independent. Okay, what I mean by independent is, let me open up the last example that we did, the CSS float. So if you see, we were giving a class name and we were writing the corresponding class details, right? The properties for that class for the CSS. These are pretty standalone. That means none of them are related or having any combination. But today we are learning that's exactly that, which is called CSS combinators, which is to select HTML elements based on their relationship with other elements. First that we will use is a white space, okay, also known as descendant selector. Now what descendant selector does is, it will select an element that is a descendant of another element. Okay, so I'm going to quickly write code and show you that in action, but before that let's create a new file for you. So let's write doc type body, right? And I'm going to use inline internal styling, and I'm going to use outside class called container. I always tend to create an outer wrapper, because we might want to do some things with the responsiveness or the width, etc. Alright, so I'm going to use a class, let's say box, and inside that I'm going to have a paragraph. So this is a body paragraph, this is a heading. Okay, basic, very basic, nothing complicated here. What I want to show you is the spacing selector. The first is the descendant selector, which means select an element that is a descendant of another element. Okay, so what we will do here, I'm going to write inside box, select the paragraph and make the color red. Okay, so you see here I'm putting a space. That means inside the class box, select a paragraph tag, right? Or select all paragraphs and put them to color red. That's what this descendant means. That means find the elements inside the parent definition. Now you see here it is red color, because it will select an element that is a descendant of another element. Okay, that's the most basic one that you should know, which is white space. So the way we write, it can be a class name, it can be a div, right? This is also fine. That means find a div, inside that find a paragraph, right? So this is also okay, this is also okay, and then you can also have something like ul li and then link, right? Now if you have a ul li, you can also have a link, and it can have any number of spaces. Okay, the element, it need not to be only one level, it can be 2 level, 3 level, any level. That's the descendant selector. Then you have the child selector, okay, which means selects an element that is a direct child of another element. Okay, now in this case, if you want to have all the ul li selected, now let's say I'm going to have ul having li, say list 1. Okay, So now I'm going to say ul li and color green. Okay, now you see it will select all the li inside this ul. Okay, but now if you look at this paragraph, right, same thing, right, you don't see any difference, but this way the targeting is better in different use cases. Now here if you do this, this is also exactly same what I just told you, but here you can also specifically target few things like I want ul, then inside that and inside. So right, so it's basically another way of writing syntax, but the output could be nearly same. Okay, so don't get confused about that. Then there is adjacent sibling selector. Okay, which means select an element that is immediately preceded by another element from the same parent. Okay, so this works very interesting ways. This is usually like in this case, right, uh, h1 plus p1, so you can do something like h1 plus p, you can say font size 24 pixel. Okay, so now what we are doing, that if there is a element, right, adjacent, that means next to it, just before that, right, so these two are adjacent, h1 and p, so that's why we are writing plus. If you write like this, that means it is looking for an element inside it which is not there, you're looking for an element next to it, so that's why you're writing plus. Okay, that is adjacent sibling selector. Now general sibling selector, that means select all elements that are siblings of another element and share the same parent, right? Now if you want, now see this, in this case if you see, when we wrote, only the first paragraph is 24 pixel because we wrote plus sign, right? So h1 plus p means only the first paragraph the font size is 24, but if you want all the paragraphs, then you will give a tilde. So now see both are 24 pixel, right, because of this one. Okay, that is general sibling. Then you have the universal selector. That means universal selector means inside this, if whatever you want to write, say font family, right, I want to use Times New Roman, that means it will apply to all the elements in the page. Okay, it will apply to all the elements in the page. Also you can do something like, say you are writing a common value or a generic style, right, for say you want border, right, let me try and add border. This should be more clear. So now you see it's adding border to all the elements because it's a generic selector. That means it will apply to all the elements in the web page, in that particular page, right, wherever this is included, it will apply to all the things. So that's why you should be very careful for writing the generic selector because it will affect all the elements in the page, so you need to be very clear about that. The next one is the grouping selector, okay, which allows you to group multiple selectors together to apply the same styles. This is yet another common thing that you will see when you're working on a day-to-day basis. Now let's say you have a h1 tag, h2, h3. Okay, so I have h1, h2, h3. Now I can use the comma selector and say the common styling. Okay, I'll say margin 0 pixel, padding 0 pixel, font size should be 10 pixel small, right? I'm making them all small. So see, now they're all small. Look at this. So basically whenever you want to style a common thing for certain classes or elements, you can use comma selector. You can have something like box 1 comma box 2 comma dot box 3 comma dot box 4 comma and go on. You can add any number of classes with comma separated, all will apply the same style. Okay, so whenever you want to apply the same style, you would use these kind of comma selector. All right, the next one I have is the attribute selector. Now this is very interesting, especially when you're styling the uh, forms. That's where you would use this mostly, or in fact, with not with that, you can use it with any element with the attribute. So let's say you are using it with the input type equal to text, right? So if you have a input type equal to text, simple, and this is how it looks without any style, correct? I'm going to remove this style for the border, so that way it will be clear, right? So this is just a input box, and what we will do is style it. So we can do something like input, and then how do you add that? So you will give the attribute. Okay, so you will type here in the brackets, you will write type equal to, now what is the type we are targeting? We are targeting input type equal to text, and I'm saying font size should be 24 pixel. So now see, it has become big. Now the font size is 24 pixel. I will say I want 2 pixels solid red color border. So now I have my form with the font, the input, right? The type equal to text is now, and I have applied font size 24 and border is 2 pixel, because I have applied only, not only to this input. Now you add any inputs in the page, any number of inputs, they all will follow the same suit. They all will have the same style. Okay, it's pretty common, all of this, when you design kind of a framework or a internal kind of a common style sheet that you want to use. The next is the pseudo class selector. Okay, pseudo class I'll cover it in the next one. Pseudo elements also I'll cover in the as we progress. I have a dedicated episode for you, but just know that these are also a type of combinators to select an element based on their state or position. Pseudo element selector is nothing but selects a specific parts of the element. Okay, so that those are some of the things which I want to cover in the next episode. I don't want to make it too lengthy for you to get complicated, but that being said, please do revise. These are extremely important. These are extremely fundamental for you to work as a UI developer. You need to know all these combinators. Quick revision: you have the descendant selector, which is a white space. You have the child selector. You have the adjacent sibling creator selector with plus sign. You have the general sibling selector, which uses tilde. Then you have the universal selector, which is star asterisk. Then you have the grouping selector, which is the comma. You have the attribute selector, which is in the square brackets. Then you have the pseudo classes and pseudo elements, which we are covering in the next episode, and so I hope you are learning. I hope you are having fun. I'm having so much fun bringing it to you. I hope you will share some love with me. Please do like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much as always for supporting me. Keep supporting me. Thank you. See you in the next episode.